Hello, everyone. I'm Charlie Tolhurst, and welcome to the Charlie Tolhurst Show live on YouTube for the 5th of February. Goodness me, second month of the year already. It's been about a year since I've done these live streams on StreamYard. Wow, it's been amazing. And definitely, as you can see, I am certainly a bit more dressed up for tonight as well. I'm joined by Labour Party supporter Zach Chambers to round up all the latest news. Hello, Zach.
Hi, Charlie. Hello.
Hi, Zach. Now, as you can see, we're back to normal this week with the show configuration in my studio. But yes, plenty of news tonight. And we're going to start, obviously, as always, with, of course, the UK news briefing, because that's part of the show where we round up all the latest news here from home. And we're going to start with the big news from Downing Street. Plenty of sackings. Boris Johnson has lost several of his top aides. He tries to obviously Gusto Harry's been reappointed. If you used to know, he used to be on GBUs until he took the knee and left. He's back in Boris's armoury now. But Zach, what do you make of the latest news in Downing Street over the past couple of days?
Oh, it's just been one of those weeks, Charlie, isn't it? Nothing has happened. Actually, I'm wrong on that. Plenty has happened. But yeah, I don't expect to be sacked tonight. Let me just say that when I'm doing this. But yeah, plenty of news, Charlie. Monday we had the Sugray report finally come out in its very 12-page redacted form, and it was already cruel. If you look at number 10 after just 12 pages looking at it, it was certainly a very cruel one. It included quite a powerful speech from Keir Starmer. It then unfortunately included the disgusting slur by Boris Johnson that Keir Starmer didn't prosecute Jimmy Savile. You would only say that if your leadership was dying and everything like that, and come out with that far right slur. So that was pretty much the highlight for the week for me in terms of what happened. And yeah, Charlie, we've had the sackings in the last few days, the restructuring as promised by Boris Johnson. Some expected, some not expected. Dan Rosenfeld, Martin Reynolds out of number 10. I have to say, not surprising, really, to be fair. If you think about it, I mean, the Prime Minister was going to shape that. They're going to sack them too sooner or later, since Partygate came out. But it's not surprising even more now that those two are out. Another one out, Charlie, I've noticed as well. Meridia Merzi, whatever her name is. It's just such a hard name to pronounce. That was unexpected, Charlie, because she left because of the jibe that Boris Johnson made to Keir Starmer, and that was directly in the letter, that resignation letter that she posted to the Spectator. Interestingly enough, as well. So she was out unexpectedly, and she's a very loyal person to Boris Johnson because she's been working since his days in London and City Hall for many years. So her resignation was pretty shocking. The replacements in Downing Street are Stephen Barclay, staff, and still a cabinet office minister, by the way. I'm not sure how you can do two jobs at once in that department, but it will be very interesting to see for Stephen Barclay how he can manage the roles of both jobs, being the chief of staff. Andrew Griffith's the new head of policy, as well. Also an MP and a PPS to the Prime Minister. Oh, bloody hell, there's a lot of jobs going on that one. And I don't think the personal secretary appointment has been announced yet so far. But yeah, there's a few ingoings and outgoings as well. Plenty what's going on in that department. So yeah, there's been a lot of sackings. The only person who really hasn't gone yet, as well. And there's a breaking news there, Charlie. Now, Henry Newman, a special advisor, is also leaving number 10, which is just news to me, actually, I have to say as well. Henry Newman's been a special advisor as well. He's been a friend of the Prime Minister's wife, Kerry. It looks like he's going to return to work with Michael Gove in the cabinet, in the Levelling Up department. As well, he could be linked to Partygate, the Independent,
and another no confidence letter as well.
yeah, several no confidence letters, Charlie, as well. Aaron Bell, one of those who brought in no confidence. Tobias Elwood, another one who sent a letter in. Nick Gibb, another one who sent in a no confidence letter, who was the minister at the education for 3 prime ministers. It's a big no confidence letter going in there, I have to say, Charlie, as well. But it's been quite a week for the prime minister. Of course, his resignations, his approval rate's at pretty much an all-time low. And yeah, it's ridiculous, Charlie. And for all the faults that he has, Boris Johnson, the thing is, Charlie, if you think about it, he's the one that's sinking ship, but the ones that are below him are the ones that are sinking ship a bit more lower as well, because they're the ones that are getting sacked at the end of the day or being replaced. Not him, the man who's pretty much responsible for half these party gates and all that sort of thing, is staying in his job whilst the others are taking the blame for him. So yeah, this is part of Operation Red Meat, Operation Save Big Dog, or whatever you want to call it, because it's just ludicrous, stupid code names for things that are a load of fluff and a load of fluffle. But yeah, this week's been the story of the week that the Prime Minister takes responsibility, but doesn't really take responsibility, and therefore it's always junior staff that falls below his feet in this week, Charlie. So that's where we are. If you really want a nice little summary of what's gone on.
Well, it's interesting, Zach, as you said there, Nick Gibb, obviously probably one of the biggest movers on the list here, that's announcing that he has put a no confidence letter. Now, writing in the Telegraph, Nick Gibb, of course, who is the MP for Bognor Regis and Littlehampton, said constituents were furious about double standards, and he said the Prime Minister had been inaccurate in a statement to the Commons. Mr. Gibb also said the Prime Minister had accepted the resignation of Allegra Stratton for joking about Christmas parties he didn't attend. He probably won't take responsibility for those he didn't attend. I'm sorry to say, it's hard to see how it can be the case that the Prime Minister told the truth. He said there was still support for the Prime Minister in his constituency, but the voters were also questioning whether they could trust Mr. Johnson. The MP said, to restore trust, we need to change the Prime Minister. That was Nick Gibb there. Former schools minister, by the way, was the schools minister under Boris Johnson just recently, to Education Secretary Gavin Williamson, but he was replaced during the reshuffle last year. So all I can say on that one, we're now going to play for you a video of exactly that moment when Boris Johnson erupted the House of Commons with booing after he referenced Keir Starmer in a very bizarre attack on him, as he claimed that he failed to prosecute Jimmy Savile. Have a listen to this.
Absolutely nothing about the report that was presented by this government and laid put in the Library of the House earlier on today. That is because, Mr. Speaker, the report does absolutely nothing to substantiate the tissue of nonsense he has just spoken. Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. Instead, Mr. Speaker, this leader of the opposition, a former Director of Public Prosecutions, Mr. Speaker, who spent most of his time prosecuting journalists and failing to prosecute Jimmy Savile, as far as I can make out, Mr. Speaker.
He's doubled down today, the Prime Minister, it seems, in the Sun, saying that he doesn't want to apologise. Do you think he's got anything to apologise for?
No, I think this is a uniquely sensitive issue, and it does need to be handled with care. And I listen with enormous respect to those who act for victims of, the actions of a terrible, terrible criminal. But, and it's not a subject that I want to dwell on because it is uniquely sensitive. It is the case that the CPS apologised for their handling of this case and what happened in 2009. And I think we should acknowledge that an apology was given at the time and respect that.
He wasn't directly involved, Sir Keir Starmer, when he was head of the DPP at the time, when he says it's a slur.
In a uniquely sensitive case, Keir Starmer acknowledged that mistakes had been made by the organisation of which he was head. To his credit, he was very clear about those mistakes. He brought in an independent lawyer to look at that. And I think that we should recognise that in doing that, he did the right thing.
Thank you there to Boris Johnson and Michael Gove, actually, who spoke on the news about the comments that he made during Parliament during the week. Zach, what did you make of that comment that he mentioned in the comments?
It's far right nonsense, Charlie. To give you a fact check on this as well, Keir Starmer was not responsible for Jimmy Savile's case. It's pretty obvious. And I've known this fact for a long, long time, Charlie. I could go back all the way to like years ago to know this fact and everything as well. But this fact that Keir Starmer was responsible for not prosecuting Jimmy Savile was simply untrue, Charlie. And it's a far right conspiracy theory that goes online, Charlie, and is used to personally attack him by these far right idiots who are more aligned to QAnon and that sort of thing. It's a ridiculous slur, Charlie. And the fact is, there were several cabinet ministers that were going around defending this potentially liable claim, Charlie. It is liable if you think about it when it's said outside of Parliament. It's not true. It's not true that Keir Starmer was personally responsible for not prosecuting Jimmy Savile. So it's a load of nonsense, and it's outraged his own backbenchers, Charlie. This claim. I remember. I think it was Steve Bryan, Julian Smith, a few others. Maurizio Moroni was one that resigned because of this slur, and in fact, the Prime Minister refused to apologise. It's just ridiculous. It's the sort of thing, Charlie, you would say when you are in big trouble politically, and you therefore got to find a way to smear and come up with these silly lies about what Keir Starmer. It's just nonsense, Charlie. It is totally and utterly nonsense, and I'm afraid. If you think about it, it demeans the office of Prime Minister. And I have to say, Charlie, it wasn't the only one that seemed to criticise it. I think it was Rishi Sunak. I think it was Thursday, Charlie, that came out and said, "Oh, boy, if it was personally me, I wouldn't have said, if I was Prime Minister, I wouldn't have said that." So it's not only it's the people at the top as well, Charlie, that criticise Boris Johnson for this quite frankly outrageous and pathetic slur, really, because it wasn't very good for him to say it, and from what I've read, Charlie, his advisors even said not to say it, but he still went ahead anyway. So yeah, it was totally ridiculous slur. I will show you what I'm talking about here. This is from Full Fact. Keir Starmer led to CPS when he did not charge Jimmy Savile, but he wasn't the reviewing lawyer. And in fact, an official investigation commissioned later by Starmer criticised both prosecutors and the police for the handling of the allegations. So, yeah, in other ways, Charlie, not only Keir Starmer did not personally prosecute Jimmy Savile, because that's the case, but he also commissioned something criticising the police and the prosecutors who didn't do their job properly. So, and that's taking responsibility, in fairness. But he's done it to make it better, to find a better organisation and find get better prosecutors. There's nothing wrong with that. I just think it's outrageous to claim that you're responsible for something you're not really responsible for. That's the fact, Charlie. There's no other way of putting about it, really.
Yeah, so that's all we can say on the PMQs issue. What do you make of Boris Johnson's comment about Jimmy Savile? Do you think that it was offensive to the leader of the opposition? Please comment down below. I'd like to hear your opinion on it. So this is the Charlie Tolhurst show. Continuing on now with the show, that's really all the news from the UK this week. Oh, apart from one thing that we did mention on the show last week, national insurance went up. Yeah, that's now confirmed. Rishi Sunak done a press conference on that the other day. That's another one of the government's mistruths, I have to say, on that one. But moving on now to another part of this briefing.
Yeah.
I want to chat about the BBC a bit now, because there's been some news about potentially the licence fee being up for review, and apparently the BBC could potentially have to pay. The BBC licence fee could be up for review. Is the BBC being defunded? We don't know. Zach, what is the latest on this issue at the moment?
Yeah, so this was announced, I think, a few weeks ago, Charlie. The BBC license free is going to be frozen, I think, for the next 2 years, 3 years. It's going to be. Let me get it up. Let me get it here. So we pay a certain amount to the BBC every year to have access to TV channels. Basically, it's their TV channels, their services, basically, and that sort of thing. So at the moment, it will be frozen for £159 a year, Charlie, as well. So that will be frozen flat in line with inflation for following 4 years. The fee will rise in line with inflation for following 4 years. So 2 year freeze and then a 4 year increase. And then I think after that, Charlie, I think from what I'm reading is that Nadine Dorries, the culture secretary, who I think is probably the most useless person in the cabinet at the moment, is considering other methods to fund the BBC. This is basically, Charlie, part of Operation Red Meat, where we offer you the most right-wing policies, conservative policies we can find to start culture wars on and all that sort of thing, and then we'll give it to you successfully. This is another one, £159 a year at the moment. It's going to go up, providing with inflation. There may well be some way to fund the BBC in the future, but we don't know yet, Charlie. I think I think Nadine Dorries sort of suggested that the license fees days is probably gone after 2027. I wouldn't be surprised at the case. It's part of the war on the license fee that the Tory government seems to be good at doing. I have to give them credit to on this one. Would it mean that the BBC is defunded? Well, I kind of hope not for cultural or political reasons. That somewhat. I know you have your opinions on the BBC, Charlie, and I know you're going to be very critical of them, all that sort of thing. But it's a ridiculous idea, Charlie. To go, I think it's ridiculous that we would defund our public service broadcaster just so they could cow to a certain political side, and then become an echo chamber of that. That's not what we want. The BBC is more than just news. It's a service. It's radio service. It's TV services, Charlie. Yeah, I think that's the reason for that, Charlie. So yeah, I don't want to see it defunded personally for me.
Zach, I have to say though, I mean, Nadine Dorries did have an interview, I think today or yesterday on BBC Breakfast, where I have to say this was all over social media. This interview got played all over social media, including on Twitter. They were saying the BBC asking the same question over and over again to the culture secretary.
Oh, come on. I mean,
that was another one that was up there.
But Charlie, the interview was a total car crash from Nadine Dorries, right? Okay. She was asked a simple question. Have you spoken to the Prime Ministers over the last few days? And she went, why are you even asking that question? Why, like, come on. If you're going to go on to be interviewed, Charlie, you're going to be expected to ask questions. Oh, why are you even asking these questions? I think the role of Nadine Dorries, right, okay, is to play the dummy boy of how to be stupid in the cabinet role. I mean, it looked like something out of the thick of it, Charlie. It really did, her interview. It was total car crash. Susanna, I think I read somewhere a comment from Susanna Reid somewhere was saying this is an interview where she's not refusing to answer questions in an interview. And I thought, yeah, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much right. It was total car crash, Charlie. It looked like something at the thick of it, and it was ridiculous, Charlie. I'll come back to you in a minute anyway, because I'm going to get my drink, and then
that's fine.
I'll get my drink, and I'll come back.
That's fine, Zach. So yes, we're going to continue on with the show, and yes, as I said, with regards to Nadine Dorries' interview on the BBC, I clearly thought it was an interesting interview. What do you make of it? Put down in the comment. Let me know in the comments below. Now, the worldwide briefing is now next. Now, this is going to be another important episode, another important news story on the worldwide briefing, which is to do with the hidden costs of lockdown. This week, the coronavirus world story will dominate this segment, and also another thing as well regarding the Russia-Ukraine potential invasion of that. Now, it's found out that lockdowns only have cut deaths by around 0.2%. Now, according to this study, which was released exclusively by Johns Hopkins University. Yes, lockdowns have only cut deaths by a small margin. Yes, I have to say, when I saw this news story during the week, or just today actually, I was shocked that it shows you that lockdowns only presented 0.2% of deaths in the first wave of the pandemic. Wow. And Joe Biden's press secretary actually gets questioned by this in the White House. So what do you make of this news story from the Johns Hopkins University?
I heard about this. I was very interested about, by the way. I was very interested when I heard about this. And this paper, I think it's been quoted about, right? Okay. Apparently it's not peer reviewed according to from what I've seen. So it may not be that reliable if I'm being kind if I'm saying that. But so apparently it prevents 0.2% of deaths. Well, I suppose you think about it this way, Charlie, and I think friendly about this. That's 0.2% better than the other option. So if you think about it, isn't that a positive? I mean, I mean, personally for me, anything that's 0.1, 2, 10%, 100%, 1,000% is better than nothing, or even worse. So in that instance, so yeah, I think Oh, thank you. Cheers. So in that instance, I think, yeah, I mean, I think I'm seeing things about this is it's sort of being dismantled. This paper a little bit. So I'm not. Yeah, I'll take these papers as a word of caution on this, Charlie. I would.
It would give the lockdown rebel MPs, particularly Boris, his backbenchers, something to be happy about, or actually to be pretty brutal about when the Prime Minister Boris Johnson implemented 3 lockdowns, remember, over the last year roughly, to slow the spread of coronavirus, which I have to say, in my view, when I look at these lockdowns, very critical of them. I personally don't think lockdowns did much difference. I mean, yes, people would argue, yeah, they saved lives, they stopped the NHS from being overwhelmed, but my main concerns with the lockdowns was so many people dying from cancer, from heart disease, people who lost their lives from other, like, excess mortality and the NHS backlog. That's a big issue at the moment. I think the government really have to focus on that more than the actual for the pandemic recovery.
I kind of get that, Charlie, because there is going to be positives and negatives and side effects to whatever you do and whatever decision you take. So, for example, lockdowns, good for protecting, slowing the spread of the virus and preventing deaths, but it also affects other services. I sort of think, Charlie, in some ways as well, that the lockdowns were the best option anyway, because if we continued on with normal life at first, say in March 2020, for example, you would have the hospital service overwhelmed to the point where you couldn't actually continue cancer services anyway. So that's my argument, that lockdowns were effective. And even if the paper says lockdowns were effective by 0.2% or something compared to what the other plan, then that's better than nothing, really, to be fair. That proves that it is better. But nevertheless, Charlie, there is going to be pros and cons to whatever you do, whatever happens, and the cancer things, the patients, all the other operations going out was no doubt a negative in that. Like, not to ignore the problem of COVID, Charlie, locking down in that sort of way, but that was a negative. There's no doubt about it. We can't deny that was a little bit of a problem, internationally and elsewhere as well.
Yeah, I think it's very critical. I'm very critical of these restrictions. I mean, I feel like it's damaged the lives of many people. I have to say that. And please, guys, let me know in the comments what you make of this new study from the Johns Hopkins University saying that lockdowns only resulted in 0.2 of deaths. Do you think that lockdowns were worth it, or do you think lockdowns were not? I personally fall in the latter category of that, but please let me know what you make of that. But the second part of the worldwide briefing is to do with a meeting that took place just before the Winter Olympic Games, which we're going to come on to in a minute. A little update, should I say, from Beijing. But also there was a meeting in Beijing with President Xi and Vladimir Putin. And Vladimir Putin was discussing potentially the continuation of the potential invasion of Russia and Ukraine. Of course, Russia potentially invading Ukraine. And Zach, what did you take away from that meeting with Xi and Putin?
Well, they're two love child. Let's just be honest on that one, Charlie. They're two love childs. They agree on most things. They're communists. They agree on most things. They agree on most aims. I mean, for example, like NATO, they oppose NATO expansion. The Russia opposed Taiwan independence. They're those two of the sort of thing. They're close allies, Charlie. They don't, and it's not really surprising, to be fair. They're two commies and all that sort of thing. They're going to have the same political aims and that sort of thing. So yeah, in terms of that front, Charlie, they agreed on a lot, and they're going to be best buddies because, like, China is going to take Russia's side if they invade Ukraine, for example. The Russians are going to take China's side if, for example, they go to trying to take over Taiwan, for example, illegally in some ways. If we think about it, both what they're doing is both illegal and comes with huge world consequences. But yes, Putin was actually at the opening ceremony, I should add as well. What I saw, because I watched the opening ceremony, and there was a shot of him there. I saw one shot of him. I think it was falling asleep, where especially when the Ukrainians came on, Charlie. You know, it was most obvious when the Ukrainians came in and Vladimir Putin was just not wanting to look. We can picture many stories about that if you really wanted to. But I have to create a bedtime story. The old man who wanted to take over Ukraine. Page 1, page 2. Yeah, you know how the story goes. It'll be a scary kids' book. I don't think it'll be made for pleasant reading.
No. I think it's certainly clear to me that the situation in that area at the moment is not great. We'll keep you updated with all the latest news from that right now. But moving on to sports round now, we're going to talk sports news. We're going to start with the main event, which of course is the Olympic Winter Games taking place in Beijing right now. Beijing, of course, is the only country in the world to host both the Summer and the Winter Olympic Games as well. The only country, 2008, the last time they held the Summer Games. This is the Winter Games 2022 in, of course, light of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, as you can see here, we have the events table. There has been some medal events today, actually, that took place. Speed skating, I think short track 1,000 meters. There was a mixed relay event as well. The China actually claimed, I think, the first ever medal at the Games this year as well. And Zach, what do you take away from the first day of action in Beijing?
Well, let's take away the action. Some of the action. No medals so far for Great Britain. This is only day 1 so far. No medals for them at the moment. We've had our first couple of gold medals coming out. At the moment, Charlie, one of the things that Norway won, it was the mixed relay gold for Oslo Rosenlund, who I think I saw this actually. Yes, I did actually. I saw the ending of this actually. It was Miss Oslo Rosenlund who got gold in the mixed relay 4x6 kilometers in the biathlon. That's what I saw there as well. So that's gold in that one as well. Cross country skiing was I think the other gold they had as well. I can't remember where that came from. I have to find that out. But yeah, so far Norway are leading on the gold medal tables 2. So far 2 gold medals. It's China and Netherlands that have the most gold, have the most overall medals so far in terms of gold, silver, and bronze. So they're on 6, but Norway's on 2 golds at the moment. They're leading with the gold medal standings in that department. Slovenia's got 1 gold medal. China's got 1 gold medal. Netherlands got 1 gold medal. Sweden's also got a gold medal as well. So yeah, they've started well. Norway's a pretty much successful country when doing these Olympics, Winter Olympics, because they're pretty good. They're the more snow-stricken countries as well. Therese Jong was the first gold medal of the game, Charlie, in Norway. It was the women's 7.5 kilometers skiathlon. As well. That's where the gold medal came from as well. In terms of GB news, Katie Ormond failed to qualify for the finals of the women's slope ski. New Zealand's Zara Sadacourt leads the pack in that one as well. The Dutch had been won their gold medal in the 3,000 meters speed skating. I think it's Irene Skolton as well, a new Olympic record as well in that one. And so that one. So the gold medal for her in that one. Mixed doubles curling, Jen Dodds, Bruce Mara, Team GB won over Czech Republic. Only lost one in 5. They will face Italy next. They are unbeaten, so someone's record is going to go there. One little bit news that came out today, Charlie, was Shaun White, the oldest member of the US team, triple gold medalist, is going to retire at the end of the snowboarding event as well after this year's snowboarding event. So wish him luck in retirement. He's a gold medalist, and he's done very well for Team USA as well. One thing they're not very good, China, who are not very good at the moment, is keeping their case numbers low, because there's been 45 new cases. Athletes and officials, 25 of them. So, yeah, this zero COVID policy is not exactly working too well at the moment in terms of keeping 0 cases about. So, yeah, just a little update there as well. We've got coming up, we will have freestyle skiing, curling, ice hockey, short track speed skating as well, mixed doubles and snowboards. Plenty more coming up tomorrow, Charlie.
Yep, plenty more coming up indeed. I can assure you that. I've also got some news here as well, which I'll certainly try and tune into some of these action from Beijing. The page is certainly a little bit slow at the moment because we're trying to get up to date with the latest news on here. But yes, there's been some news about a medal, I believe, that's actually just come out. Walter Wahlberg from Sweden has just won gold in the men's moguls as well. Defending champion Mikael Kingsbury had laid down a big marker in the final of the men's moguls with 82.18, but it was Walter Wahlberg of Sweden who actually come back and actually beat that number to win gold in that event as well. Also, Peoples of Republic of China win that as well. Rihanna Fontana makes history in short track speed skating. Also in normal hill, Ursula Bontagagi wins women's normal hill gold there as well. Cross country women's skiathlon was Johan of Norway. So yes, a big amount of events. And as Zach said, plenty more events coming up over the course of the games as well. I believe there's also more events tomorrow. We've got luge, men's luge, singles as well. Tomorrow and early in the morning as well, we have the Great Britain versus China in the mixed doubles round robin curling. Eve Muirhead will be in that event as well. I'm actually going to get up for you now very quickly some of the coverage of the events that are taking place. By the way, this is all UK time, so if you're not up, I wouldn't blame you for it because it is very early in the morning. But we've got curling, heat 2 of the men's short track speed skating as well. Short track speed skating, freestyle skiing, men's moguls, qualification 2, snowboarding, women's slope style, and many other events as well. I'd also like to give a special mention to Laura Dees, who is going to be competing for us in the women's skeleton as well. We have won gold the last 3 times, actually. Amy Williams, Vancouver 2010. Lizzie Arnold, both Sochi and Pyeongchang, 2014, 2018, respectfully. Can Laura Dees make it a 4th in a row for Team GB in the skeleton? All I'm going to say is good luck to her for the skeleton event. And you can catch all the action on the BBC for the Olympic Winter Games in Beijing. But moving on now to motorsport now. Couple of motorsport updates. Number one is a political motorsport update. Formula One now have announced mandatory vaccination ahead of the 2022 season. Now, I have to say, is this going to turn into the Novak Djokovic saga? Because it's been announced that one person has not had the vaccine. That is Alan Vandermeer, the medical car driver, who, of course, you might remember him for saving Romain Grosjean's life during the fiery accident in Bahrain in 2020. Zach, what do you make of these new rules coming into Formula One?
I agree with them. I think they're the right decision to go, Charlie. I think that's pretty much necessary. I think it's absolutely the right decision to mandate vaccines and for everybody taking part in F1, for all personnel. I presume the medical car driver is going to get sacked because if he's not going to get vaccinated. I have no sympathy if that's the case for him as well, because he should have got vaccinated. And the fact that he's a medical car driver, he should have set a great example. Doesn't set a great example as well to choose the wrong medical decisions. Unfortunately, imagine being a medical car driver and you're taking the wrong medical decisions. My goodness me, Charlie, how on earth is that setting a good example? But I agree with this. I think this. What will happen, Charlie? It avoids a farce, because what happens is we won't have a situation where we get to say Australia, for example, where they require vaccinations to enter their country. There, you need proof of vaccine or you refuse access, unless of course you have a positive test and you have immunity within, say, the last 90 days, for example. That's an exemption. You got to prove your exemption though. You can't lie on a paper or anything like that, like Novak Djokovic did. So could there be a Novak Djokovic moment? Well, hopefully not. The rules have been set. I think they've done this so they can avoid that situation, Charlie. I think it's absolutely the right move. Or countries like Australia have the right to choose their own border rules and the rules to enter their country. And I think, for something like F1, I think they got ahead of the curve to avoid a farce like what we saw with Djokovic. And what they're doing is completely right, Charlie. I think it's absolutely right that they've mandated the vaccines. I think it's absolutely the right decision.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because Formula One also have car launches taking place over the week as well. We're actually at a stage now where pre-season testing is going to be starting very soon, because the season kicks off on the 20th of March and we're already getting car launches. Haas were the first team to unveil their new VF22, the first time we're going to see the new cars of the new regulations take shape. I have to say though, Zach, I was a little bit underwhelmed with it, to be honest.
Yeah, it's the same livery as last year, pretty much, as well for the Haas car. But obviously, the one thing that's different, Charlie, is it's a different car. It's maybe the same livery, but as you know, Charlie, it's a totally different new car this year. Changes the front wing, changes to the aeros, changes the whole with new 18-inch regulations as well. That's what the car looks like. It looks. If you forget the livery change, it looks brilliant. But the actual livery itself is no different to what it was, Charlie, if you think about it. So that's the underwhelming. They're the first car to be revealed. It's the, what's it called? The VF22 as well. I'm just trying to think what technical changes they're going to think that Haas has tried to develop as well. They've called their car the most complex in the last 20 years, according to the technical director, as well. But yeah, so everyone's going to adapt to these new regulations as well. Haas think they can get into midfield with their focus on the 22 car in their their sort of version of it. But we shall see, Charlie. We will see if they've done the work to be able to move up the field, because they've been has been at the back for the last 2 seasons as well. So hopefully last year they moved. They can get the team up the field a little to see on that.
Yeah. Sorry, guys, we did have some technical difficulties there, but we're back up and running again now. I just want to say quickly with the car launches for Formula One, in terms of dates, important dates, Red Bull have actually unveiled their launch date for the RB18. Yes, Red Bull have launched a date for Max Verstappen's title defense. Here's the teams here. Haas, 4th of Feb. Red Bull, the 9th of February. My goodness. Next week, there is going to be some big launches that I'm just going to get up for you now on the screen very, very quickly.
There's 3 of them launching, Charlie. 3 teams launching their cars next week. Red Bull 9th. The Ferrari, Aston Martin doing the 10th, and McLaren will do theirs on the 11th of February. I believe their launch events are being televised by Sky as well. The Aston Martin and McLaren events are certainly being televised. I'm not sure about the Red Bull one. There is definitely going to be an online stream for the event, though, which will be good to see. So I'm looking forward to seeing all these car launches, Charlie. It all comes around really quickly. Charlie, it definitely comes around really quickly, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing the brand new cars in action. I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Yeah. We've also got other cars. Mercedes will launch their W13 Challenger on the 13th of Feb. Will there be a Silver Arrow livery? We don't know. I really hope they go back to it at some point. Maybe for the British Grand Prix, given Sterling Moss. Given that we lost to Sterling Moss, I think, a couple of years ago. It'd be really nice to see a tribute to him. Ferrari as well. F1 75. Interesting. Maybe 75 years Ferrari are celebrating in motor racing. I wonder what that one is. Alpine, Alfa Romeo, Williams, the rest of the launches there. Now, one more thing before we wrap up this sports round quickly. NASCAR return tomorrow. Not for the start of the season, because that's at Daytona, but for a non-championship event at the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. Zach, you excited for this?
The Busch Clash, Charlie, in a completely different way we have known it, Charlie. It's at the LA Coliseum, which, oh my goodness me, Charlie, I'm really looking forward to seeing it. It's a totally different venue. It's tomorrow. Qualifying is tonight at 1:30 in the morning, UK time. The race, I believe, is the heat is going to start off about 8 p.m. UK time. And the actual race itself is going to start off at, I believe, 11 p.m. UK time. There will be 75, I think 150 laps. And there will be a half-time show for measures as well. It's going to be performance. So, yeah, it's going to feel a little bit like a Super Bowl, but for cars, Charlie. It will be like a knockout format at the start, and then it's going to be a main event at the finish as well, with a good old grand prize at the finish as well, Charlie. So, yeah, it's going to be a very interesting, exciting event that is coming up, I think, as well, Charlie. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah, and also there's been a couple of driver changes in NASCAR as well. If you've not seen the Cup Series, plenty of driver changes that have been coming to the Cup Series as well. Some part-time drivers, some full-time drivers are going to be coming back to the series as well. Plenty of news that has been released that as well. And yes, Larry Mack has broken down that as well in one of the new cars as well. But the Busch Clash also sees plenty of news for NASCAR as well. Brad Keselowski as well is his own team by the looks of it. 23XI Racing adds Jordan Brand to partner Kurt Busch at number 45 team as well for 2022. Ice Cube is set to perform at the race break along with DJ Ski as well. Also in some more NASCAR news as well, Joey Logano is in the series as well with Ford as well. And also Kroger returns to JDC Dougherty Racing number 47 Chevrolet as well. And Floyd Mayweather Jr. launches the Money Team, Money Racing Team with Kaz Gralla for selected races this year. Zach, what do you make of these driver changes?
A lot of changes, Charlie. Let me just say that. There's some familiar names in there as well. Kurt Busch in at 23XI Racing. Todd Gilliland is a new rookie at front row. Justin Haley in at the 31. Ryan Preece out. Stenhouse no change as well. Ty Dillon to the 42 at Petty GMS. Rich Petty. Keselowski is number 6 now at RFK. Austrian Cendric is number 2. Out goes Keselowski. Russ Chastain at Trackhouse. Harrison Burton in at Woods Brothers. Chip Ganassi is Kurt Busch is out the 1, and the 42 Ross Chastain. They're moving teams as well. So yeah, quite a few changes, Charlie, to look out for. We're going to all see it. Some of it tonight, some of it at the Daytona 500 in a few weeks' time, Charlie.
Yep, as well. The Rolex 24 was also on last weekend as well. You can watch the highlights of that as well. The Rolex 24 was actually won by Helio Castroneves for Meyer Shank Racing, one of the drivers who won a chaotic 24 hours of Daytona as well. More on that a bit later. But coming up now to Conversation Corner, where we're going to talk about The Apprentice very quickly. The games design task, video game design, 2 teams, 2 project managers, Brittany Carter for Team Diverse, and Infinity was actually Akeem who swapped teams. And 2 games, one called Time, one called Arctic Savior. And unfortunately, a shock firing, I have to say. Francesca misspelled Arctic and got fired by Lord Sugar. Zach, what did you take away from this latest episode?
It was gaming week, so you had to make a electronic game, create graphics, name it. I have to say, Charlie, wow. There was a spelling error. Oh dear, you never make a spelling error, Charlie. You never make a spelling error in something like this. It was the Sam who misspelled Arctic, who put Arctic without the C at the front. Oh dear. How could you make a mistake like that, Charlie? Shocking error. Shocking. And I must admit, looking at the game, it wasn't that professional. It wasn't well thought out as well. I like the other team's idea of a more, more darker but more formatted game. The Arctic game was pretty bad, wasn't it, Charlie? To be fair, it was less formatable. It was less appealing. It got 0 sales as well. Would you believe it, Charlie? No sales at all. Compared to the other team that got, I think, was it 6,000 sales?
Yeah, something like that, or 60,000, I think they got.
Yeah, something like that. So it was a miles and days difference between Arctic with a C, with Arctic, yes, Arctic with a C. Remember that next time you go on a team, and the other one, which I've got the name of, but never mind. We always just remember the Arctic one without the C. If you can't spell the name of the game, the name of the game is failure, and failure it was in that instance.
Yeah, failure it was, and Francesca become the 5th candidate to be fired from the process as well. Who was actually sub-team leader in that task as well, Francesca. Akeem somehow got his video game working. And won the task. Quite a huge victory for the other team this time, who actually won the task. Team Infinity, their first win, I think, for quite some time on this show. Akshay once again in the losing side. He's lost all 5 tasks so far, Zach. I am surprised he is still not eliminated from this process.
Yeah, and you know, if you think about it, Charlie, to be fair, he wasn't one fully at fault this week, and he was on the losing team. But to be fair, I think he wasn't the one that made the name changes, to be fair, so that's probably why he didn't get fired. So, yeah, 5 out of 5. Oh, dead man walking. Dead man walking.
It's not going to be good, though, when he goes to the interview rounds and then they see, like, Claude or Tim, who has to interview him, saying he'll be on the losing task. Why on earth are you here? There was a candidate a couple of years ago that got told that you've been on the losing team, 7 out of 10 tasks. Oh, that would be the ghost of the interviews. I wonder that. So that is all I can say, guys, for Conversation Corner this week. Next week, with The Apprentice, they actually go to North Wales and be tour guides, which looks very interesting. Catch that show on BBC One from around 9 o'clock on Thursday. Moving on to the papers now. Let's have a look at your latest newspaper headlines right now. So, having a look at the papers, the Daily Star says the Plank of England paper. Bank of Governor Andrew Bailey has been described as the Plank of England on the front page after suggesting people should not ask for a pay rise. The Daily Express said Boris saved my skin and I'll change. The Daily Mirror says cops handed picture of the Prime Minister with lager at a number 10 party. He's a Strella lockdown bash. The Guardian says Prime Minister even more isolated as he attempts to rally team. The Independent says Beijing Games open under a shadow. According to that was the opening ceremony of Beijing, where the cauldron lighting took place inside the stadium as well, inside a huge sculpture. Also in the main headline, isolated Prime Minister struggles to regain grip and power. The Daily Telegraph says British Gas sorry for leaving homes in the cold, as people have been reporting of problems with their boilers. The Daily Mail says health officials in the offices just 4 days a month. And the Financial Times says Bailey accused of pay rise hypocrisy. Zach, what do you make to the latest newspaper headlines?
Yeah, it's quite an interesting set of headlines. Let's go to the top, actually. Start off with the Star. This goes on Andrew Bailey, who's the Bank of England, who in an interview, I think it was with the BBC or Sky, I can't remember what it was. He was on the broadcast round after the Bank of England raised interest rates from 0.25% to 0.5%. For the very big interest rate increase there. He went round and basically said in an interview, right, okay, that to basically sustain the economic growth and stop the inflation rise, he told employers basically not to ask for pay rises. And the Daily Star points out he earns £575,000 a year, and yet those who aren't looking for pay rises recommend he shouldn't. So that's why they've gone with the Plank of England, because it is a hypocritical position to go on, Charlie, and it's incredibly cruel and enriching for him, considering the others who are struggling with the pay, struggling with inflation, struggling with the cost of living, and are just looking for pay rises just to get it out a little bit, just feel like they've got the money in the system, rather than what's going on at the moment with inflation, food price rises, and all that sort of thing. And yeah, it's hypocrisy at the latest from the Bank of England, Charlie, into that. No wonder why he's given the name Bank of England on there. Let's move down, if that's okay, Charlie, to the Express. And they said, Boris, save my skin and I'll change. Well, isn't that blatantly obvious, that front page? I think that's pretty blatantly obvious. Save my skin and I'll change. Everyone else goes to the dump fire. That's the whole Prime Minister strategy at the moment, Charlie. Not surprisingly, it's basically, I will take responsibility, but I don't really take responsibility. My staff are the ones who take responsibility, and therefore they're the ones that should go, not me. That's the Daily Express, their Tory loving paper, Boris loving paper, just basically admitting plain outright that Boris is there to save his own skin and all that sort of thing. So yeah, it's such a a con front page in that instance as well. If we can move down, if that's okay, Charlie. The Daily Mirror. It's an interesting story, Charlie. This is a very, very interesting story. The Pippa Creer from the Daily Mirror is reporting in this paper that the Prime Minister has been photographed during one of the alleged party lockdowns on his birthday with a lager, and this has been apparently handed to the police as part of their investigations into Partygate. So what is also interesting as well, and I don't think it's been mentioned on the front page, Charlie, what was also interesting as well, the Daily Mirror is reporting that Rishi Sunak was there as well. It's not on the front page. Sunak was also next to the Prime Minister with a drink as well. Now, if that is the case, Charlie, and the Rishi Sunak gets fixed penalty notices out of this as well, then he could be in bigger trouble as well, Charlie, and there'll be an absolute crisis for the Conservative Party in terms of finding the right leader if that is the case, Charlie. Because that, Johnson, wow, Sunak, even bigger wow, because Sunak is the favourite to replace Johnson at the moment if Johnson ever steps down. And that, if he's caught in this picture, wow, that changes the dynamics, doesn't it? As well. The Guardian is going PM even more isolated than he attempts for 18. Obviously, this talks about the changes going on at number 10 and the fact there's been a lot of these changes that means a lot of familiar faces are basically out, Charlie. Prime Minister's gone with more obscure names. Stephen Barclay is new Chief of Staff tonight. As I said, a bit weird that you're doing two jobs at once in that instance. Guito Harry, the new Director of Communication, replacing Jack Doyle, who left that role as well the other day. So yeah, that's the changes up in the top as well. The Independent goes with the same thing, basically isolated PM strolls to claim grip and power. The Beijing ones, let's talk about the Beijing ones actually, because I watched the opening ceremony. It was interesting. It overran a little bit. I liked it, but there was definitely some issues with it. I think there was a Uyghur in there as well, Charlie. Unfortunately, there was a Uyghur in there that was seen to be used for promotion for the Chinese, which I thought was pretty despicable. But for the rest of it, I thought the display was pretty decent. The Telegraph decided not to go on the changes of the office, but the British Gas, sorry for leaving home in the cold, as you're aware, Charlie.
Yeah.
The energy cap this week has increased by 50% from April the 1st, from £1,956. That is going to leave a massive cost for customers in April. I know this Rishi Sunak has announced some measures, crap measures, which I should say. Very misleading measures, I have to say as well, that he's announced, like the rebate scheme, where you would pay £200, basically get £200 off, but then repay it. It's a loan, not a rebate, I should point out to Rishi Sunak. And that one, I'm afraid, the Daily Mail, has decided to totally ignore what's going on and go with their health officials in the office just 4 days a month for all. It's the continued attack from working from home from the Daily Mail, which they've constantly gone on about. And they're just still going on about it. It's just boring at this rate, Charlie. It's a miserable old sod. The leaders of the Daily Mail,
the ones that the paper. Remember the paper of Keir Starmer, COVID party hypocrite headline. That one
as well. The ridiculous front page of that as well. And then Free FT Weekend also goes on the Bailey pay rise hypocrisy claim as well in that one. So yeah, nothing new there. The Times goes with civil war and cabinet. The PM told to sack Sunak. Whew. Crikey, I have to say. I presume it relates to the Sunak rebutting Johnson on the Keir Starmer Jimmy Savile claims. As you know, there's been outright outroar as well. In that side, the I goes with the same thing as well. So yeah, the only new paper that I have seen, Charlie, that has come out since tomorrow is the Observer, who will go with the front page. Partygate, PM removal now inevitable, warns a Boris Johnson loyalist. I think they're probably right, Charlie, in that terms. How long he lasts, who knows? And more MPs, over the last week have submitted letters of no confidence. Number 10 team's been rejigged. It'll be very interesting how the operation goes, Charlie. I don't think it's going to be any better than what it really is, to be fair. But yeah, that's the Observer's page is the only front page I have seen so far to come out for tomorrow. But yeah, so yeah, that's it at the moment in terms of the front.
I just was going to say the Weekend, the last paper here. Conservative MPs fear Boris Johnson has lost authority and number 10 in his ministers. So it's clear to me that Boris Johnson is in trouble at Downing Street. All I can say is we'll keep you updated on all that latest news. Now it's time for the final part of the show where we're going to nominate. We'll go to that in a minute. I just wanted to also mention a couple of things before we move on to that part. If you are watching Dancing on Ice tomorrow, please note that there will be no Philip Schofield on the show because he has unfortunately tested positive for COVID-19. So Stephen Mulhern will be filling in for him. And also the Rolex 24 Hours of Daytona as well. Zach, what was your impressions on that race quickly before we move on and do the final part?
I didn't see much that race, but I saw it was quite what I saw, Charlie. It was a wild finish at the end, Charlie. I mean, one of the categories, Charlie, it was a last lap crash from what I saw in that race, because it was a pretty wild finish from what I saw in one class. I think it was the Porsche car, GPM class that I saw. That there was this last lap fight, and at the chicane, Charlie, there was a crash as well, and the very last lap, and it was exciting racing. Tom Blomqvist, I believe, was the overall winner though, Charlie.
Yeah,
if I'm correct. The Brit. Well done, congratulations, Tim. Ricky Taylor was second. Novak Duville was third, and Pippo de Wolf in as well, another category as well. I think it was Devlin DeFranco who won in the LMP. I think it's the LMP2. I think it was.
Yeah, that was the IndyCar drivers. Yeah.
The LMP Patricio Award.
And Colton
Tom
Herter.
Blomqvist was winner. Yeah, Tom Blomqvist was winner. Hello, Captain Simon Paddock, Oliver Jarvis was the winners as well. Devin DeFranco, Patrick Ward, Colton Herter, Eric Lukes in LMP2. LMP3 was Felipe Fraga, Carl Van Berlo, Michael Cooper, and Gar Robinson. In the pro class, it was Matthew Jamet, Felipe Ness, and Matt Campbell who won the pro class. The GTD was Jane Howland, Richard Lights, Ryan Hardwick, Zachariah Robinson was the GTD winners as well. And I think that's it. That's the classes done in terms of the winners of the Rolex 24 Hours of Le Mans there.
And Zach, just before we move on, any news on Philip Schofield? What do you make of the replacement for Dancing on Ice?
It's a well-safe pair of hands, Charlie. Not sure about this show, but yeah, it's a safe pair of hands and the most obvious choice for replacement.
Yeah, that of course being Stephen Mulhern, magician, and well known on our TV screens, host of Catchphrase. But time now for the Great British Star and Red Devil. Right, here we go. This is going to be one I think that will be very controversial this week. For all of the listeners out there who are going to be interested to know what our picks of the week are, we're going to start. I'm going to start with my Great British Star of the Week. And this, I'm going to give it to, I'm actually going to give it to someone who has been, I think, very important this week, actually, to people. And I'm going to give it to someone, I'm actually going to give it to a Conservative MP. You might know the man who was in the Commons earlier this week, and we spoke about him earlier in the show. He's a guy called Aaron, as we know, and
Aaron Bell?
Aaron Banks. Aaron Bell, sorry, Aaron Bell,
Yeah,
yes. Aaron Bell wins my award for Great British Star for a speech in the House of Commons that criticised Boris Johnson, saying, "Do you think I'm taking us like a fool?" Aaron Bell wins my Great British Star of the Week. That question really took Boris Johnson apart in that session of House of Commons. And I have to say, Boris Johnson certainly doesn't get any better, because my Red Devil of the Week is going to be two of them. It is both Boris Johnson and Vladimir Putin who get my nominations this week. Now, Vladimir Putin got my nomination for what he done during the opening ceremony of the Winter Olympic Games, but also the continuation of a potential war in Ukraine. Boris Johnson, though, actually went to Ukraine and also had a bit of a disaster over there when it comes to what he said in Ukraine about the war in Russia, a potential war in Russia as well. There wasn't very good negotiations over there, I have to be honest with you. Zach, what do you make of the nominations this week?
I actually agree with them. Aaron Bell's speech was very moving. I think it struck a real tone, and would be probably many of the public will agree with it, actually, from what I saw. And the Johnson, the Putin ones, yeah, I certainly agree as well. I mean, Putin falling asleep. If he's going to invade Ukraine, he's certainly going to be falling asleep at the wheel. I hope that doesn't happen anyway.
Right, what's your nomination, Zach, for the Great British Star and Red Devil?
My one's a bit of a cute one for the British Star one. I'm actually not going to give it to Human. Would you believe it? I'm not going to give it to Human. I'm going to give it to Florida Flamingos. Would you believe it or not? That's the one, because over the last 100 years, these flamingos have been pretty much extinct from Florida. They disappeared for quite a long time. They disappeared. Now they've come back. They are in 2021. They magically reappeared in the wildlife there, and it's what a sight to see a pink flamingo, I have to say as well. They are making their homes there, according to scientists who track these sorts of birds. They were 100 years considered rare migrants. And now they've been seen in Florida every year since 2021. There's been up to 1,000 of them being caught in Florida, being seen. And that's an incredible change. And well done to the scientists who are, watching these flamingos and catching these flamingos who are rehoming themselves in Florida. So I'm going to give my British Star to the pink Floridan flamingos for making a special reappearance to the life on Earth. More wildlife can only be a good thing in this planet, Charlie. So they're my British Star. The Red Devil this week, Charlie, goes to Nadine Doris, or shall I say, Plank of the Week, if we're gonna, the Donkey of the Week, shall I say. I'm giving it to her based on the car crash interview she gave this morning, and the car crash interviews she has given all week, from Channel 4 to BBC Breakfast, from like the interview on Monday with Christian Guru Murphy was a car crash. And it's just been every day of the week, Charlie. She's appeared somewhere, slagging off her own MPs, becoming a meme on Twitter and other social media platforms, and then the car crash interview on BBC Breakfast this morning. It just sums it up for that she is the PM's donkey, and she deserves nothing more than this week's Red Devil. So Nadine Doris, my pick this week.
Yeah, as you can see, one of them there accusing Sky of lying in a chaotic interview. As well, Zach, you certainly have chosen someone interesting for that one. I have to say that.
Yeah, most obvious choice this week.
Yeah, my one certainly had to be Boris Johnson for that joke that he made on Monday. Jimmy Savile, I don't even know whether he got prosecuted by Keir Starmer. No, he didn't, according to what I heard as well. as well. There was also a couple of others. You could have had Joe Rogan as well, if you had that podcast and COVID conspiracy theories. I don't know whether
he brought Spotify shares down, certainly for that, for peddling anti-vax conspiracy theories. Other artists have pulled out of Spotify. They pulled their music out of Spotify because of recent episodes. He also had to apologise to Zeman for saying the N-word on air as well, racist language that he's been using as well. He's certainly had a pretty tarnished week, I have to say as well, Charlie. Joe Rogan, he doesn't help himself sometimes. He's got a very incredibly popular podcast, but he doesn't help himself with some of the information he does come up with and the anti-vax crap that he mentions. So yeah, that's you could have chosen him, but I chose obviously Dean Doris because he's the one that got the most attention, quite frankly. As well, from what I saw, it's just too laughable to make so much so that she deserved the Red Devil.
That was an exact nomination, the Dean Doris for the Red Devil. Thank you for watching this show today, the Charlie Tyler Show. We'll be back again next weekend for another one of these podcasts. Charlie Tyler Show returns next weekend for more great discussions on the latest news. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.